A murder suspect let out on the street, and we found a systematic failure that allowed it to happen.
Even more disturbing when we began asking the tough questions on how it happened, we got the blame game. We want to make sure it doesn't happen again, so 10 on your side's Andy Fox began investigating.
Tom and Anita, we started digging into this story in October, and since then, the Newport News sheriff, who no longer takes our calls, launched an internal investigation which has raised new questions. Tonight, we're holding everyone accountable, and believe me, there's enough blame to go around. How does Eric Nixon, charged with murder and 9 other felonies, get out of the Newport News City Jail? On October 21st, Newport News Sheriff Gabe Morgan admitted his jail staff knew something wasn't right.
Mr. Nixon told us, hey, I'm not supposed to be released. So, normally bad guys don't tell us we're not supposed to be released.
Yeah, but wasn't it a red flag when he was telling you that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nixon confirmed that to us, too.
But I was going to Hampton. They was like, no, you going home.
Did you tell them, no, I'm not supposed to go home, I'm supposed to go to the Hampton jail?
Yeah.
So we were surprised when Sheriff Morgan wrote this following his internal investigation into Nixon's wrongful release. I was never made aware of his pending charges in Hampton, nor were my deputies. But that's not true. Morgan was aware. You just heard him.
We checked with Hampton, and
even though he's saying, I'm not supposed to be released.
correct.
To check whether Nixon was wanted in Hampton, Sheriff Morgan gave us this screenshot. At 4:16 p.m., Newport News Deputy Robert Allen calls his counterpart at the Hampton Sheriff's Office, who told him no charges in Hampton, no pending per Hampton Records Department. Hampton Jail Administrator Major Stephen Rich.
They did not call us. They can put it in their system, but they did not call us.
Indeed, Hampton phone records show no calls received from the Newport News Jail on October 9th. And Newport News records showed the only call made from Deputy Allen's desk was to an 804 area code, nothing to Hampton. Morgan needs to somehow explain why calls to Hampton weren't recorded. So he hired a consultant who couldn't say for sure if a call was made from Newport News because the phone system is old and may not record every call. But the Hampton Sheriff's Office is not without blame either. They transferred Nixon from Newport News juvenile detention to the Hampton City Jail without a signed order by a judge. He was delivered, you knew about the charges, and yet you would not admit him into your jail because you didn't have the paperwork. Rich never called the man requesting the transfer, Jonathan Robinson, at the Hampton Court Services Unit. Had he made that call, Robinson would be reminded there was no judge's order to put Nixon in the Hampton jail. So you're not taking any responsibility for this?
We had no documentation.
You don't need documentation. You had knowledge. You had law enforcement knowledge that he had been indicted in your court system on 10 felonies. It appears Major Rich transferred his problem, Nixon, to Newport News, where there was a judge's order to put Nixon in the Newport News jail on an unrelated assault and battery charge. 27 days later, Nixon would be released from the Newport News jail. Sheriff Morgan's investigative summary faults Robinson at the Hampton Court Services Unit. Robinson was on leave and refused returning phone calls. Do you know how the Eric Nixon situation happened? How there was...
Absolutely.
How did it happen?
I can't talk to you.
We did find one of Robinson's colleagues, who would not identify herself, but says the Court Services Unit and Robinson did nothing wrong. I just want to know why Mr. Robinson did not give a commitment order for him to be brought into the Hampton City Jail.
We do not issue orders. Judges issue orders.
That is true. The Hampton Circuit Court Clerk's Office confirms Robinson did call them, but only went halfway. He never put in writing a request for a judge's order to put Nixon in the Hampton jail. Sheriff Morgan's investigative summary states it was Robinson who got the right paperwork to get Nixon behind bars after he was released from Newport News. Mr. Robinson advised he was having an intake officer prepare the paperwork at that time to commit Nixon to the Hampton City Jail.
In hindsight, I wish Hampton Court Services was ensured that everyone had the paperwork.
We went looking for Hampton Sheriff B.J. Roberts at his office. Instead, we found his colonel, Karen Bowden.
So he is the elected sheriff. He's in charge of the jail.
We all know that and understand that the sheriff will not be conducting an interview.
We wanted to ask Sheriff Roberts why his office transferred Nixon from Newport News juvenile detention without a signed commitment order from a judge, which is the law. Turns out, our investigation has led to a change with the Hampton Sheriff's Office. Spokesperson Lieutenant Alonzo Cherry emailed us. We have since required our deputies to have a committal order to transport. There you go. Following our October report, Newport News Juvenile Detention met with all those involved in the Nixon case to clarify what should happen before they release someone. We found out the required signed judge's order was not always required. Now it is. And as we reported, Hampton now gets that. It appears now everyone is on the same page. As for Eric Nixon, he is in a local jail awaiting his scheduled murder trial on March 3rd. For the record, it was Eric Nixon and his mother, Alfreda McCoy, who did the right thing and turned Eric into the Hampton City Jail once Newport News turned him loose. I'm Andy Fox, 10 on your side.